Oh, you there? I've lost you. No, Tim, I can't hear you. Are you well, Tim?
I'm well. Yes, I'm very well.
It's night time. You got your iced coffee at the ready?
I do. I've given up on going to the IGA at the end of the street. I'm just going to the service station now. It's after being several times burnt with them not having them there. Well,
what, they not in stock?
Yeah, you remember some months ago I said they didn't have, and I thought, well, fair enough, you're sold out one night, and then again they sold out again. I like to support little supermarket like that, but
they're not going to have iced coffee.
Well, you build a supermarket around iced coffee. You see, you put the fridge in.
Well,
and then
I would have thought every sort of retail outlet within a 10-mile radius of where you live would just be really well stocked with iced coffee.
Just in case. That's right.
Yeah, I know 4 new KFCs have popped up in the last few months.
I have to be honest. I don't know whether to say this on air.
I really love KFC.
Can I just underline that point? No, I'd have to say I had an indifferent experience with KFC the other day.
Oh, hang on, Tim. Save that for my idea in the podcast today.
Oh, okay. Sure.
We will come back to that. I'll even make a note. KFC.
Indifferent KFC. Okay.
Indifferent KFC. My podcast is called the Indifferent KFC Podcast. What a coincidence. Before we start, I have a little housekeeping announcement thing.
Yes.
And that is, we're trying to boost the Patreon support a bit to keep the podcast sustainable. And we've had a bit of an idea to encourage people, to thank people who already do it and encourage new people to become patrons. What we're going to do is, after the last episode, the Tommy Ball audiobook, in which Tim's namesake, the Tommy Ball legend Tim Hine, read an audiobook, and a lot of people enjoyed his work, he has agreed to, as a sort of a special art project, read out our entire list of Patreons' names in his full Tommy Ball audiobook character.
Wow.
So that's something we're going to be doing shortly. So if your name's on the list of our Patreon supporters, no matter how big or small, you will have your name read out by Tommy Ball legend Tim Hine in an upcoming project.
Gosh, that's a coup. How did you wangle that? I
know. It was like money exchanged hands, as always, when you're dealing with Tommy Ball, Tim.
Oh, that's good news.
Yeah. So just a couple of little things you need to know. It will be everyone who is a patron at the end of the current month. And we are currently in May 2020, in case you're listening to this, in the future in the Washington Library of Congress or something. This was May 2020. If you're a patron at the end of the month, your name will be read out. A couple of things you should know, though, like, for example, some people might want to support us on Patreon and not have their name read out. If when you're a patron, if you sort of click or choose no reward, which is one of the options when you sign up as a patron, you can say no reward, don't send me stuff, don't put me on your wall of fame or anything. If you're a no reward person, obviously your name won't be read out. So if you're like a spy or something who can't have their identity revealed, but you want to support the Unmade podcast, your secret's safe with us.
Will this recording be made available just to the Patreons, obviously, as well?
Well, I don't think there's any reason to do that. I don't know whether we should tag it on the end of a podcast or we should just release the audio separately. I haven't quite fully thought it through. But certainly the patrons will have access to it because, they're the ones who are going to want it most, so they can snip out their name and make it their text ringtone or something like that. But that's something that's coming. Also, another thing you might not know about Patreon, because, some people just want to support you, like with, a buck here or a buck there. When you sign up on Patreon, you can limit the amount you pay a month. So if you say, okay, I'll give you $1 per episode, if Tim and I then release 90 episodes in a month, you're not going to get a $90 bill. You can just cap your donation. So I'm not saying you should cap your donation, but you can cap your donation.
Of course, people can put a different name to be read out. Is that possible? Like they might want to have a friend's
name?
Well,
that is possible, but then you'll have to but then your name will appear differently on our wall of fame and things like that. So I wouldn't encourage that. You actually do bring me to the final point, though. we do reserve the right, absolutely, to not read a name. That covers us in two eventualities. Yeah. One is if we make a mistake and we miss one. That's just like, oops.
Or we mispronounce it.
Yeah, mispronounce it, yeah. But also, yeah, if you play funny, goofy and start putting inappropriate things in there, we just won't read it. So, and you will have missed your opportunity at immortality.
That's right. This is the one opportunity at immortality. It's a lot of power in Tim's hand, isn't it? In his mouth.
I've actually been thinking about this, though. Like, what else can we do down the track? If people like this idea and, like, it's a success, what else we could do? One of my future ideas is having Tim play a guitar solo to every single person on the list.
Wow. That's like...
How do you'd love that.
You'd have to talk to his agent about that.
I'm talking about you, Tim, now. I'm talking about the actual Tim now, not Tommy
of course.
Ball Tim.
Yes, me. Yes. Because Tommy Ball Tim doesn't play guitar.
He's always been a saxophonist.
Yeah, that's right.
I think he would play saxophone, wouldn't he? I don't know. I don't know what instrument Tommy Ball Tim would play. Definitely something that involves blowing.
I could play. That's great. Yes, I could do a solo for. Wow, that would be incredible. As long as people were then willing to draw a picture of me and send it in, and we could put it on merchandise, like the now infamous Joe, legendary Joe.
By the way, those of you who haven't seen the picture that Joe did, our listener Joe did a picture of Tim, which we've now put on merchandise, like towels and wall tapestries. I actually have ordered one. I actually now have a Shroud of Tim beach towel that I'm placing around the house at random times to scare my wife. I hung one. Yeah,
impress.
I hung one in the bathroom the other day, thinking she'd walk into the bathroom in the morning and get a laugh, but she walked into the bathroom and just had this giant, like, huge Tim looming down. She screamed in terror.
Oh dear.
Anyway, so patreon.com/unmadefm. Patreon.com/unmadefm if you want to support us. If you do it by the end of the month of May 2020 and everything's all signed up and works at the end of the month, you will be on the list. Your name already will appear then on like our Hall of Fame on the website, but you will also be part of this epic readathon by Tommy Ball Tim.
I wonder if Tommy Ball Tim can read. Was that checked?
Well, he read his audiobook out.
Oh, that's true. That's very an important point. Entire episode dedicated to him reading.
Yeah. So that's good stuff.
That's good housekeeping. Well done, man. Lovely housekeeping.
Thank you.
Put together well.
I didn't do it well, did I? Now I think about it. It was a bit of a shambles.
You're pretty famous for not doing housekeeping, so well done.
I even had notes written in front of me so that I wouldn't be too rambling and muck it up, but I still mucked it up.
See if we can make it up with your idea.
All right. Now, I know I've been bullying you a bit lately by going first all the time, so I'm going to let you choose whether you want to go first today or not.
I have 3 ideas in front of me, and I can't decide between them. So I'm going to let you go first and see which one feels like a lovely natural segue afterwards.
Yeah. Nice. Okay.
You get to set the tone.
It shows what an adaptable podcaster you are as well, that you've just got, you can just change midstream, just like,
Oh, agile. That's right.
You're an instinctive podcast is how I like to describe it.
Thank you. Thank you.
You run on instinct.
Rather than
talent.
Rather than preparation or know-how or research.
Rather than preparation.
Expertise.
Talent. Knowledge. So, my idea, let's call this the professional complainers.
Okay.
Right? Now, the idea of this is each episode is dedicated to our hosts, maybe 1 or 2 things that they want to complain about, right? But the idea is it's sort of supposed to be almost like the trivial things that you shouldn't complain about. I'm not saying it's complain about the government financial policy or stuff like that. It's more the little stuff like someone swore on TV or there was a misprint in the paper, right? So you decide the thing you want to complain about this week. I've got a few other examples I'll come to. And then you talk through the problem and your outrage at the problem. And then together each week you draft a letter or message of complaint that you then send to the organisation in question. And that could be quite fun. And then you send it off, whether it's tweets or messages or emails or letters. Preferably there's always a letter at the end as well that you can then put on a website or something. And then the next episode is always starts with responses you've had to your complaint. Like hopefully people sometimes will write back, whether, they tweet back or they write a letter or they ignore you or other people respond to it after hearing about it. So each episode starts with responses to previous complaints and then goes into that week's complaints. But I always want them to be a bit trivial. Like, I've been doing a lot of crosswords lately in the newspaper, so it could be, I think this crossword clue was a bit rubbish, or I found a punctuation mistake in the Times, or
yes.
But it can also be like the ridiculous, like a new sign goes up in your neighborhood and you write to the local authorities or council saying you don't like the typeface, or
that's right,
things like that.
But the more formal the complaint, the better. But
the complaint is always legitimate. It's not always, I think there should be more clouds in the sky or something. It's got to be like something that someone kind of almost has to respond to, because a lot of organizations kind of are obliged to respond to any letters they receive. That's why I say you should always write letters, because they kind of have to respond. So a letter. But I'm not talking about that fantastic book that I'm sure many people have read called The Time Waster Letters, where this guy writes to people just to waste their time, and he's not necessarily complaining. He could just be having wild ideas. It's not, obviously it has a time wasting element to it, but the complaints are always legit. And they are something, they do have to be something that has like riled you a little bit, even if it's a little bit mild.
I wonder if there could be a goal. I love this idea, by the way, but I wonder if there could be a goal in mind to actually enable change. So it's not just, in other words, can we get this change? And so that gives it a bit of a focus. It's not just having a whinge.
The absolute golden episodes are when you either affect change or you get like a formal apology.
Yes.
those are like red letter episodes.
Man, are you a complainer? Do you do this at all?
I'm more a complainer who leverages my social media following.
Oh, really?
If I feel like I'm being done over, I'll do that. And if you have a large enough following, you tend to get at least a response. I always think, well, all these huge organizations have so much power over me already, and I'm so much like a slave to them, that why not leverage the one little advantage I might occasionally have? And it's not like I'm using my social media following to, well, and I'm not doing it to like civilians or just like, lone people. These are big organizations, multi-million, multi-billion-dollar companies that are doing me over and wouldn't respond. So why not? Why not?
Can I just clarify? Are you talking about going on, say, Twitter and complaining, look, X company, why don't you do this? Or you've done this to me, or I've been on hold for 10 minutes now, or something like, 10 minutes is a bit ridiculous.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
For an hour now. Or do you threaten it? Do you actually say, do you know that I happen to have a social media?
Oh, no. That would be, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't like threaten it.
Okay.
I would just go on and I'm lucky enough that some people listen to me. I'm going to tell these people about the poor thing that's happened. Sometimes that affects change. Most of the time it doesn't. Most of the time they just reply and say sorry. But anyway, let's workshop this a bit, Tim. Let's talk about your indifferent KFC experience and talk about what we might write to KFC.
Oh, well, I guess having given them about 12 episodes of free publicity, mentioning one indifferent experience isn't going to get us a letter from their lawyer. I was just eating it the other night and I was like, that's not that great. But it was...
Was it just a bad batch, or was it like a realization about KFC, like existential?
Well, it was both. It was a little bit existential because I remember just looking down and going, it was a bit like, what are you doing with your life?
If I had $1 for every time someone has sat in KFC looking at their food saying, what are you doing with your life?
Normally KFC is what you turn to in that moment. Like, you're at work and you go, what am I doing with my life? I'll go get some KFC. But it was...
Every minute working is a wasted minute that could have been spent buying KFC.
That's right. So I'm in the middle of a KFC meal and you have this moment. My first instinct was, I should go get some KFC. But then it's like, hang on a second.
I'm at KFC. So I drove to another KFC down the road.
Well, we were experimenting with a new one because we've moved. And
Yeah.
The first time it wasn't that great. We were like, wasn't that, it was maybe the new location. And so the pressure was on to go back to the old location the next time it came around to have some. And I said, no, I think we need to give the new location a second go. And it just, it wasn't that great. It wasn't terrible. I remember someone, mentioning, well, this is better than last time. But even then I remember thinking, but so what? Like it was, suddenly I was like, hang on a second. I don't know if I'm really enjoying this. It was more a case of maybe, what am I doing to my body, not with my life?
This sounds like a brilliant episode of my podcast because it's a complaint that they almost can't do anything about, but it's so funny to write. Like, dear sir, I was at your, KFC Glengarry outlet last week, and I have to say, it just wasn't quite as good as some previous KFCs I've had, and I'm also beginning to think it's a bit unhealthy and like just like this, just like pouring out a relevant heart out to this manager of KFC Australia.
Got me thinking of. I was just not enjoying it as much. I can't point to anything specific.
I think I need to run more.
And you went, what if you sort of got, kind of rambling a little bit, and towards the end you're like, look, it's not you, it's me. I'm sure it's me.
Yeah. And I'm sure I'll come back around at some point.
That's right. Maybe I was just having a bad day. I don't know. I've been very tired lately.
Just ignore everything you've read.
That's right. I'm sorry.
Tell me more about what was wrong with this KFC. What did you have? Was it like a 3-piece feed? Was it the chicken that wasn't good? Was it the chips? Like what let it down?
I did something different. I got a burger and I then had a piece of chicken. And to be honest, I quite enjoyed the burger, Zinger burger, but the piece of chicken, I was like, this isn't great. Maybe going to the new location, the time difference getting back home was quicker. Was longer.
Yeah.
So maybe I had time for some, logical thinking to kick in.
Reflection.
The impulse had kind of gone and I was like, well, probably shouldn't be eating this.
It's like this Thunder Rolls moment where you're like sitting there in the rain and the dashboard and
the Thunder Rolls. You have to explain that. You do, everyone.
Look it up, people.
Yeah.
So maybe the new venue just hasn't got like the herbs and spices right. Like they got given the wrong herbs and spices.
Well, then that's a management issue, isn't it? That's quality control.
You could get people at that branch in trouble with your letter.
I could. I actually complained about something else in the past week. I don't complain a lot, to be honest. It's not my habit. And I certainly, although despite your best efforts and the efforts of kicking me over to well over now 2,000 Twitter followers, which was a good amount of fun. Yeah. It's not the sort of thing that's going to bring, say, Microsoft to its knees. But I bought a book on Amazon. And it was a book that was a bit hard to find, so I got it through. It wasn't through Amazon, itself. It was through them to, how you have the small bookshops and so forth in different parts of the world. And it just took ages. And I paid for priority shipping to get it quickly. And a month later, it hasn't arrived. And I got suspicious. I got impatient, and my impatience got me a little bit suspicious. Where is this? Is it coming? And I'm looking at the tracking, and then first the tracking number wasn't getting me any information, and I'm like, this is starting to be, and then I be a bit dodgy, and I started looking at a little bit further down the sort of the what do you call it with the stars, the people's experience, the rating of the,
like their reviews and stuff.
Indeed, yeah. And there was some other people that had some bad experiences, and I was like, oh no, don't tell me this is a scam. You know what I mean? I've paid all this money, and then it's into American dollars, and then it's kind of for shipping as well, and it's a hardcover and expensive book. So I was like, oh, is this? So I sent off an email of complaint to the person. So look, is this coming, or where is it at, or could you provide details? When did you send this? And they got back, but it was really weird because their first impulse was to say, if you would like to refund, then let me know, or would you like me to send another one? And I was like, that didn't sound defensive enough, like that almost was like, oh yes, there's a problem here, we'll give you another one. And I was like, no, I don't want a refund, because if I get a refund and then it arrives this week, I'm going to have to send it back to you, and I actually want the book. I wanted them to say something reassuring.
Oh, Tim, you're so innocent and sweet. Why didn't you just get the refund? And then if the book turns up, you got a free book.
Well, because I said to them, look, I did eventually write back and say, if I've if I don't want to send it back. If you want to refund my money, that's fine, but I'm not going to send the book back. I want to keep it. So then I feel like I'd be stealing if the book arrived.
Yeah.
And if they I said, if you send another one and the first book arrives and the second book, I will be giving another one to a friend. I will not be keeping, you know what I mean? I will not be sending that
back. You
back.
don't want to faff around with resending it back. Do you know what, Tim? Like, your honesty, as always, is admirable. You know, it's the right thing. And as someone who has to send a lot of stuff, and at the moment stuff's taking a long time to arrive.
Yeah, I get that
I appreciate people with your degree of honesty. But a lot of these organisations just don't want to be dealing with these emails, and they'd rather just write off the book or the money and not have to be sitting there. They're probably making like $1 profit, and they've already spent more than $1 of their time reading your email and replying to it. And the biggest favour you could do them is to stop messaging them and just take the refund or say send another book. And you're there going, oh no, I don't want to rip you off. I don't want to waste your time, says Tim as he writes his 9th message of the day to them.
I didn't say I didn't want to waste their time. I do want to waste their time in order for them to be diligent, you know. I guess I feel a degree of, well, I do want to be honest, but I also don't want to feel obliged to them. And by the looks of it, it looks like it's like a small book shop in the middle of nowhere. It's not like I'm getting it from Amazon's main factory. And
okay, yeah,
I kind of want to, and I think, oh well, every sale probably counts to this person, but it's like,
is it a small bookshop though, Tim? Because I know people who like just live at home and buy 1,000 copies of one book and keep it in their spare room, and they become like the Amazon supplier of that book. So I think it's possible that you're picturing Meg Ryan struggling to make a living in some beautiful shop where she's reading books to children, when in fact it's just some guy who's got 1,000 copies of that book in his basement and just sends them out all the time.
Well, I want to say, if his whole life is this book, he's taking a long time to get it to me. Like he's got a very, he's doing a really bad job.
One job, guy.
It's like it
could be the postal service.
I know, but it took 10 days till he sent it, and I was like, when I looked through the tracking, and I was like, oh wow. And then I'm giving grace because of obviously the world, the tracking is slower at the moment. But anyway, that was my complaint story, and I don't think it had the desire. I suddenly realized now, as I'm telling you this too, I didn't actually want a result. I wanted reassurance, like it'll be okay. I'm sure it'll get there soon. And I'll go, oh, okay, thanks. And then I would have been happy. Like that would have given me enough to, hang on for a few more days.
That is happening a lot, yeah. Because at the moment, I sent out a bunch of records well over a month ago all around the world, quite a few of them. And some of them are only just arriving now, like a month or two later. So a lot of those people are starting to email me saying, oh, I think maybe it's gone missing. And then like a day later it turns up. So it is. I know what you're looking for. You're just looking for some, communication. Proof that the person exists, basically.
That's exactly right. I did say, I did mention... I just want to know this isn't a scam or something like that, or is this I'm starting to wonder if this is a scam, and
can you just reassure me that it's a scam?
At least I'll know that. That's right. I think it's fine. Yeah. Well done.
Dear
you
Tim,
got me.
Yes. Dear Tim, yes, you have been scammed. I'm sorry about that. I've got your money, and I went and bought some KFC with it. Sorry about that. You won't be receiving the book. If you do want the book, I would recommend going elsewhere for it. Definitely don't order it from me again.
I'll reply back, how did you find the KFC? Because I had some last week and I don't know.
It just wasn't doing it.
Oh, dear.
I love that you had like that indifferent KFC experience, and it's like still on your mind days later. Like it's not like you had a KFC and thought, oh, that wasn't very nice, and then forgot you even thought that and just went about your business. Like it stuck with you enough that like on a podcast listened to by tens of thousands of people, you feel like you need to say, I actually had this KFC and I didn't like it that much.
It's like a glitch in the Matrix or something. It's like it stands out. Yeah. Well, I feel like I needed to balance it. I feel like we've talked about them a lot, and I want to say, you know what? Sometimes it's not that great.
Yeah. No. Yeah. And KFC is not particularly healthy.
No, I think that's reasonably well known. It's a sometimes food.
The professional complainers is one of the ideas that we've done that I think would be fun for us to do.
Oh, yeah.
I'd love to just write that letter together, that letter to KFC.
That would be fun. Maybe you should do that and we'll see how it goes. The wonderful thing about this, of course, is that many companies and other organisations have a policy. You write a letter, you're going to get a reply. You will get a reply.
Yeah.
Often they have an email form, which is a bit boring. But being able to send a formal letter is great, and getting something formal back on letterhead, which is...
Oh, yeah. That's the dream. I wonder if you wrote to the Queen to complain, you might get like something like, because people who write to the Queen often get letters back, like not from Liz herself, but one of her secretaries. So, you know, as long as you weren't rude or obviously stupid, and you just wanted to complain about something that sounded legit.
What about the royal family would you complain about? Or what?
Oh, you know what I'd love to write to the Queen about if the professional complainers were going to write? I'd love to write and say Buckingham Palace was a bit disappointing. I recently saw Buckingham Palace for the first time, and it wasn't quite as big as I imagined. Just to see how they deal with that.
I've been through Buckingham Palace, and I thought some of it were quite specky, but some of it were just, oh yeah, that's all right, that's another room. It was a bit tired, but I just assumed there's some really amazing places that we weren't allowed to go to.
Oh, that's what you'd write in your letter then. You could say, I thought some of the rooms were a bit tired. You know, it was a bit samey. I've not been inside Buckingham Palace, but I have to say one of my favourite things when I'm in London is when you have to get a cab, particularly at night, but any time, and you just happen to drive past Buckingham Palace. It's such a surreal experience to just be like doing a normal thing like getting a cab and looking out the window, and there's this thing you saw a million times when you were growing up on TV, and now it's just a thing you drive past.
Oh, there it is. I was hoping to see more secret doorways and things. Like, I understand that it has a lot of those sorts of, you know, like, oh, from this room it looks grand, but if you pull on the third book on the shelf, the door comes apart and the Queen goes into her private apartment, you know. And
this is where like the Batman suit, except it's like her dresses and stuff.
It's just tiaras and
there's these two poles. One says the Queen and the other one says Prince Philip, and that's what they slide down when they
do a carriage at the bottom. Just comes. That would be awesome. If I was the Queen, if I was the King, you could probably get that built, couldn't you? You look and say, look, I'm wondering if we might do some renovations.
If I was rich, I would definitely have more poles in my house to slide between floors.
Yeah. It would.
So I went to see the Crown Jewels recently at the Tower of London. I've been a few times before. This was definitely the best time. And the reason it was the best time was because it was the same day that the Queen was doing her speech in Parliament, like her Queen's speech that she does once a year.
Oh.
So the crown she needed, she was wearing it. It had been taken out. And it was so cool to be visiting the Crown Jewels and looking at all the stuff. And then in one of the most special cases where one of the most important crowns was, the state crown or whatever, there was no crown there. And there was just a little sign saying, this item is currently in use. And then I pulled out my phone and went onto the BBC News website, and sure enough, there was the Queen wearing it, doing the speech. But it was so cool to see it empty. Like, it was more exciting than if it had been there. And the other thing that was cool is one of the last little exhibits just before you walk out of the Crown Jewel exhibit at the Tower of London is all the boxes that the crowns get stored in, just as like an extra thing. Oh, here are the boxes we keep them in when we're transporting them. And that box was missing too.
Oh, that's great.
It was like, this box is currently in use. So the crown and the box were both gone. So
that is cool.
I didn't take pictures because you're not allowed to, but someone I know took some sneaky pictures with their phone, so I might put them in the show notes for you. Wow.
It's always crossed my mind whether they use the real crown for these kinds of occasions, you know?
Me too, which is what made me think, oh, maybe, obviously they do.
Or maybe they just put it out the back. And
or maybe the one on display is a fake crown too. A lot of people would speculate, although they always say it's not.
That's right, yes. But you have to wonder, if it's not safe there, where is it safe? And I guess, out the back in a safe is going to be safe.
Yeah, a place where no one knows, I think, would be somewhat safer than a place that every single person in the world knows.
This is true.
Yeah. If the most famous tourist attraction in England isn't a safe place to put something. I want to steal the crown. I wonder where it is. Oh, I know. Go on Wikipedia. Where is the crown kept? Oh, some place called the Tower of London, apparently.
But that's like saying, well, let's not put the gold in Fort Knox because that's when they'll expect us to have put the gold. It's like, yeah, that's what we built. That's where we put the gold.
I tell you what would be safer than Fort Knox, though. A place you haven't heard of that they don't announce and don't say where it is.
That's true. Yeah. Rather than, for instance, the Crown would be a lot... They could find safer places for the Crown than on the head of a senior citizen walking, for instance.
I reckon I could take her.
There's that story you always told me years ago about was it the Hope Diamond when they...
It was the Cullinan Diamond.
Right. When I'll tell this.
That was the biggest diamond ever found.
Yeah. And they were going to ship it overseas. And so they had a decoy, which was a fake diamond with security guards. And then they just got some guy to pop it in his pocket and walk onto a plane. And that was the safest way of getting it there.
Yeah, I think there were two brothers that had the job of cutting it. And I think one of the brothers went with the big publicised convoy, and the other brother, I think, just got a train back to Amsterdam or something. But he carried it with him, in his coat.
That's great. Yeah. One last question. From the Tower of London, any complaints?
Yes. Some of the acting was a bit lame. They did this thing where these actors came out and they reenacted something that happened there in a side room. So, and like, because I was with a little kid, we went off to watch the acting, and it dragged on a bit. Like, I felt, and because it was in this small stone room, and there were like only like 10 or 20 of us in there watching, you couldn't really walk out without like walking through the performance, and it would have been a bit rude. So I was kind of stuck there having to watch this thing that dragged on a bit.
It's a hard reenactments at tourist locations. The acting's always a little bit suspect, isn't it?
You're not going to get like Edward Norton and Meryl Streep, are you, doing it like
Meryl Streep doing it 9 times a day on a shift.
Yeah.
Over and over.
I always wonder, like, when I watch people who are like at that level of acting, so they're either on the way up, hopefully for them, or they've peaked, or they're on the way down. I don't know, but I'm sure it's not like, the pinnacle of acting. Like what they do when they go home and like just talk about their day to like, their friends or their partner and stuff. Like, I always wonder what their stories are like. How was your day? Oh, it was good. I think I did a good job today. For some reason, that job in particular, I always wonder about what their conversations are like.
It would be
at
a
home.
lot of fun. There would be a great novelty in the job for quite a while.
Oh, and every time's different, and the kids are always funny because they always interact with the kids, and kids just do random stuff. So it's like unpredictable. You never know what a kid's going to say. So
yeah, if there's interaction, that's much better, isn't it? If you've got to entertain the crowd and interact with them, that's much better.
They were interactive, and like I just think it went on a bit too long. It was not enough interaction and too much lameness. I'll put that in my letter.
Do you reckon they have like the...
Just imagine that. That'd be great. A letter to the Tower of London. I recently saw the performance about... I can't remember what the performance was about. It was someone who was in prison there. And say, I thought it was pretty good and the interaction was good. I thought it went on like a little bit too long and the acting wasn't quite as good as I would have hoped. I think the acting could have been a little bit better. Like at certain points, I think they fell out of character a bit. The acoustics weren't that great because the room was all made of stone. Like just all this ridiculous complaining in this letter, just to see how the Tower of London replies. We're sorry about the acoustics. There's not much we can do. As you know, it's a heritage listed building. Do you have any complaints about the Tower of London?
No. I was just wondering do you reckon there's the equivalent of the Oscars or the Golden Globes for those actors? Like best actor in a tourist, best actress, best supporting actor. The guy with the musket on the left who, that kind of...
Best audience interaction.
Yeah, that's right.
What would they be called? Like the reenactees or something? What would their name be?
The reenactees.
The reenactees.
That's great. That's great. I can just see a statuette. It's like the Oscar, but it's just some Civil War guy with a musket in his hand, or just...
I'm just imagining the red carpet where all like the paparazzi are there, and there's like 19 guys in a row dressed as Henry VIII.
You've got all these people playing similar people.
Some guy who plays a stormtrooper who thinks this is going to be his year.
That's right. You got all the people. That's right. You got Disneyland people and all that sort of people as well.
Yeah. Mickey Mouse, Robin Hood.
Yeah.
Oh.
So they can do best pose, like how they pose for photographs and that kind of stuff.
Do you know what would be a great award ceremony? An award ceremony for people who are lookalikes. And like the best lookalike of the year. Imagine what the red carpet would be like for that. And you've got like 9 guys that look a little bit like Brad Pitt all next to each other having their photo taken.
It would be good to see, because lookalikes are usually pretty local, like from a state or area. It would be good to have a national or an international competition so you get some really, really good lookalikes.
Can you imagine how humiliating it would be to be on the red carpet at the lookalikes and you go up to the journalist and the journalist says, so who are you supposed to look like?
That's right. There is a very famous story of that Charlie Chaplin once went in a Charlie Chaplin lookalike competition and came second, which is pretty classic.
I have heard that story many, many times, but I've never heard of or know much about the person who won.
Oh, indeed.
I wonder who that was.
That's a mystery person. That's a great achievement to go into a lookalike competition and have beaten the person.
Yeah. Is that good, though? Does that mean is it good to beat the person? Because that means...
more like the person... more like what people think the person looks like than the person themselves.
So you're not a good lookalike. You're a good lookalike of what people think the person looks like.
Ah, you've overplayed it. That's right. You're overacting. That's right.
You're over lookaliking. It's one of the real pitfalls of being a lookalike artist is over lookaliking.
It looks like...
How was your day at work today? Oh, I just feel like I over lookaliked it today.
What was it? Oh, the eyebrows. I don't know. I did something.
I don't know. People could tell as well. I could tell my audience. They weren't responding. I was overdoing it. I looked too much like Brad Pitt today.
Years ago, I was in a conversation, a group of people I didn't know, and it was about a radio station. And one guy described a band that I'd never heard of. They were called Tourniquet or something like that. And someone said, well, who do they sound like? And the guy said, they're more Pearl Jam than Pearl Jam. That was his description. Yeah. And that was 25 years ago, right? And I think about that all the time.
That's like a real cliche thing to say, though. People, I published a video a week and a half ago where someone said a band sounded more like the Beatles than the Beatles. Yeah, they do the Beatles better than the Beatles did.
Yeah, but I know what they're saying. And
25 years later,
I do.
I wonder if in 25 years you're still going to be talking about that indifferent KFC.
I think about it and every time it comes to mind, I remember where I was sitting. I remember the guy's face. I don't know the guy's name. I remember him saying it. And I remember thinking at the time, that's not possible. And then I remember, but every time I think of it, I go through the same little mental exercise. They're more Pearl Jam than Pearl Jam. Like they sound more like Pearl Jam than Pearl Jam do. And I know what he's saying. They've got a Pearl Jam sound that's quintessential and that Pearl Jam sometimes deviate from their sound. That's Pearl Jam, to deviate from the Pearl Jam sound. So they're still... So every time I go through the little... It takes about 2 seconds to go through the little mental exercise and I go, you know what? That's just not possible. It's just... No, I reconfirm it in my mind. And it's...
This is what it's like to be Tim, people. That's right. Do you know what the most amazing thing about that story is, though? Do you know the guy who said that to you?
Yeah.
Was the guy that won that Charlie Chaplin lookalike contest.
That is a coincidence. He goes, believe I know this from experience. This band is more like Pearl Jam than Pearl Jam.
That guy's more Charlie Chaplin than the Charlie Chaplin. Too right. He's got the trophy to prove it. So I think we need to do our episode sponsor.
Is it Ting? Ting.
It is Ting.
Yes, Ting.
Wow. You were listening before we started recording when I told you who the sponsor was.
Ting.
Amazing.
I didn't write it down, but I'm glad it's Ting.
So Ting is a mobile phone service provider in the United States. So Tim and I, unfortunately, have not been able to ting up until they spread their wings and get into other countries. But if you're in the US, you want to sign up with Ting. And I'll give you 3 quick good reasons. Nationwide coverage. You only pay for what you use, which I think is the really important thing, especially at the moment where people can't go out much. So most of your texting and your calling and stuff is going to be done through your home Wi-Fi that you shouldn't be having to pay for your phone provider. So at the moment, people who I imagine on Ting contracts are getting the smallest bills imaginable because they're hardly going out. Whereas if you're with other phone providers, you might have some deal for so many texts and data and calls a month, and you have to pay for that whether you use it or not. That doesn't happen with Ting. Only pay for what you use. And the other great thing with Ting, no contracts. You're not handcuffed to them for 10 years. You use them. If it's working out for you, you keep using them. If it's not, you don't. Can't get fairer than that. And if you go to unmade.ting.com, that's unmade.ting.com, $25 credit to start you off. Fantastic.
You know, I wonder if Ting becomes so legendary for the way they've approached billing that it actually becomes like a verb. Like, I want to ting my mobile deal. Because I actually would like to do that with my mobile deal. I want to ting it.
You want to ting it?
Yeah, I want to ting it. I wonder if that could catch on. And they go, what do you mean you want to ting it? And that is, I only want to pay for what I use.
Yeah.
I want to ting it.
It's kind of like a buffet where you like you know, you get those buffets where you weigh your food, so you only pay for what you eat.
No.
You get those places like all you can eat. You know how whenever you go to an all you can eat buffet,
yeah,
you go in with the best of intentions, and then like 2 days later when you're hungry again, you think, oh, I should have eaten more. I didn't get value.
So you weigh it? Is that wow?
Yeah, there are places where you weigh food. I've been to them in like America and stuff as well. You go in and there's just all these like a buffet of food, and you just weigh it, and that's what you pay for.
Well,
and that's how Ting's doing it.
They've tinged a buffet, but they haven't tinged my mobile plan yet.
No, well, Ting have tinged a mobile phone plan.
Well, indeed,
what you need to do. You need to move to America and sign up with Ting.
Well,
and you'll get $25 credit if you go to unmade.ting.com. Check them out. Their website's really good, by the way. It's like a really simple one of the, you know, those websites that are really like uncomplicated and just tell you what you need to know in a very elegant way. So go unmade.ting.com, check them out. They don't sell jewelry. They don't sell bells. Ignore everything Tim has said in the past. It's mobile phone service.
Ting.
Well done, man. So what's your idea?
All right, so
Mr. Instinct improvisational podcaster.
Let me just read through them again to see which one is the best segue.
I would have thought you just would have had the feel by now. You just would have felt it.
Well, I've written here professional complaint, but that was your idea, wasn't it? So we'll cross
that was the one
off.
I just did, yeah. That was mine.
All right. And we've talked about the indifferent KFC, so I'll cross that off too.
Right. That's it. That's all I got.
Those were my two ideas. I'm gonna give you two. I want you to choose. Actually, I'll let you choose, man.
Don't burn one.
Well, no. Like offline, I mean. Like you tell me which one to go with. You've got energy for.
Oh, okay. All right.
The sofa shop is your only stop for the sofa you need. The sofa shop, yeah, come and drop in. We have a sofa designed for you. Choose your fabric, match your curtains too. The sofa shop ain't gonna cost what you think it will. Don't you do a thing until you see the sofa shop.
Let's go with the dad one.
All right.
What do you got?
All right. I'm going to go with a podcast idea called My Dad's Pride and Joy. Yep.
Nice. I can already hear the Wonder Years theme music playing.
That's true. What would you do? I think this resonates pretty quickly. Everyone's dad has a pride and joy, you know? And it's often described in that way. And I've heard it at funerals and just in general conversation, whether it's a hobby or it's a car.
Yep.
You know, it's or it's a garden. It's you know, my dad's pride and joy. And I think people coming and talking about that at a particular time in their life, you know, whether to celebrate them, their dad, or just because it's timely for whatever reason because of the particular object it is. I think this is an obvious great story generator.
Your dad strikes me as someone that would have had quite a few pride and joys. He was quite like a proud man, wasn't he? Like, you know, like
he took pride in things. Yeah.
Yeah, he took pride in things. He wasn't proud as in it wasn't like a character flaw, but it was he took pride in things.
And a few specific things. So you're right. There's a few things came. Well, one thing was his garden. I get the feeling now actually that this is a bit of a Dutch thing. So Dad took pride in his garden. He loved a garden and he worked hard in the garden and he generated veggies and stuff, but he loved flowers and he'd done that all his life. And there's nothing particularly unique about that, except I'm reading a book at the moment about Amsterdam. And in the start of the book, the author's talking about something about the Dutch character, and he talks about, they have pride and they want all the normal things. They want a big family and they want wealth and a little patch of dirt with a small picket fence. Actually, like a very neat, they like a neat little garden.
Yeah.
You have to have a little garden if you've, ever been to Holland or seen it, but they take great pride in doing a good job with it. And I think that was a particularly thing with Dad. He did a good with his...
Do you know what a funny thing about your garden in the house that I knew when you lived in Marion?
Yeah.
Is it was very big, right? Like surprisingly big whenever I saw it, like how far back it went. It was very extensive and, well kept to the best of my knowledge. But I reckon I must have visited that house probably 500 times. I don't know, I'm just making up a number, but hundreds of times.
540 on the knocker. Well done, man.
Right. I reckon I went out into that back garden 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was, and every time I went there, I was like, "Oh, this goes back way further than I thought. This is way more extensive than I thought." But I just never ever, for all the time I spent in your house, and slept over there dozens and dozens of times, went there hundreds of times, watched TV shows, just spent so much time in that house. 3 times, I reckon, I saw that garden.
Do you reckon that's because we became friends at an age where it wasn't like, "Hey, let's go play outside"? And
it wasn't a very good garden for activities as well. Like you couldn't play cricket or something in it because there was so much stuff in it. But yeah, we were just at an age where all we wanted to do was either watch TV or later on go out and go other places. Like there was just no reason to go into a garden. The only time ever that we once slept on your back patio because it was a really hot day and a really hot night and we decided we were going to sleep outside and put like blankets and things on. I think we put blankets and things on these long lounge chairs or something. I remember within 3 seconds, I accidentally swallowed a fly.
Really? I have no memory of this.
Yeah, I remember. That's my only memory of your back garden is swallowing a fly.
Did we go inside after that or did we stay out there?
I think we stayed out there. I can't remember.
Wow. It was hot. Yeah.
There you go. You get all the good stories here on the Unmade podcast. Brett, I once swallowed a fly. End of story.
I don't. Well, we were past that age of BMXs and all that stuff.
Yeah.
In fact, I don't think I had a bike at that house. I had a skateboard.
I remember your dad being out there a bit. Did he spend a lot of time in it? Because, as I knew him later, he was a bit older. Your dad, he wasn't like super mobile. Did he still spend lots of time out there working on it? Like, was he up to it?
Yeah. It wasn't as much as in Traralgon, like the other house I'd grown up in as a kid, where that was very manicured and all the rest of it. He was a bit older there. He certainly did a lot. It was a jungle when we bought it, and he cleared it out, and we pulled out so many stumps from old trees and stuff, and he made it all nice. And there was like a front section of the backyard where he put flowers and all that sort of stuff, and built a brick barbecue and things. And then behind that, there was sort of like where you'd have a veggie patch, and he didn't bother doing much. He did some stuff down there, broad beans and stuff like that, but after a while he let that go, and it was just the, closer in, because he was getting a bit old.
If the words Toyota Crown don't come out of your mouth in the next minute, I'm going to be devastated.
Yeah, it's a night for crowns, isn't it? Something that should have been in the Tower of London is my dad's crown. Toyota Crown.
Toyota Crown.
Yeah. Dad was so proud of this car. It was his pride and joy. He had a great amount of pride in it. And there's something about the Crown. It's sort of like the poor man's Volvo. Like it's boxy and it's sort of classy, but in a, you know what I mean? It's a Toyota.
It's a bit crap. But I remember we used to always joke about the Toyota Crown, the Crown, as we would call it, like in this sort of legendary way, because your dad loved it so much, but it was a bit of a, I don't know how to describe it, but it's not a cool car. And I'll never forget watching, was it The Late Show? And there was a sketch The Late Show did about like mocking old people and how old people are actually really mobile and stuff, but they deliberately like make our lives but they deliberately make our lives inconvenient. I'm just going to have a water.
You've swallowed a fly.
I swallowed a fly. But they deliberately make our lives inconvenient by, like, you know, slowing down on purpose when we're around. And there was a scene where they're, like, at this mission control area, all the old people, and they say, that's it, bring out the Toyota Crowns. And there's this scene where 5 or 6 Toyota Crowns all pull out of driveways and clog up the streets.
That's right.
Then we need all major arterial routes in and out of the city blocked. I want them cut off. I want traffic backed up for miles. It's time to call out the Toyota Crown. And this time I want caravans on the back of them.
And I didn't realise until that point that Toyota Crowns was this cliched old person's car.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
it was like vindication of all our jokes.
It was. Dad was such a legend. The great thing about the Toyota Crown, though, it's not that someone has, like, it's not like it was a Mercedes where, oh, well, it's Dad's pride and joy, you know. It's a Crown, right? And Dad got it secondhand.
So it's not like he'd had it for 40 years and when he got it, it was like, you know, amazing.
Oh, no. And Dad's not even really a car guy at all, really. Like, he's, you know, like...
What did he like about it so much? Just that he paid for it, I guess.
It was the best car he ever had, you know. He just felt so proud of it. So...
Oh, now I feel like a right.
Well, it was, I think it was kind of, in his mind, the Prestige. And where he got it from, the story where he was is quite interesting too. When we were living in Traralgon, there was one of the wealthiest guys in Traralgon, was a guy who later was a man who had a what do you call it, soda pop, like, you know, a soft drink company, a local one, and it was quite a strong business in a small country town, and he had this Toyota Crown, right? But then he was upgrading. So he was getting a new car, getting rid of his car, and for some reason Dad found out about this. And I think it was a bit like, you know, it was sort of touched with gold because it was, wow, if he drove it and I can have it now.
The prestige had rubbed off on the car a bit. And
and Dad, who was, you know, Dad was like a hairdresser and a postman, lived at home and was retired, was a retiree.
Yeah.
And he was like, whoa, if I could wangle this, that's a good, I mean, because they're a good car, good solid car, all the rest of it.
So it's like I've got the Rolls Royce that used to belong to the Queen sort of thing.
That's exactly right. That's precisely it. Yes. Yeah.
So,
but there was a lot of toing and froing about negotiating about this because Dad put an offer to the guy and the guy said no. And then the guy, apparently, he says he called up Dad again the next day. And Dad drove a hard bargain, right? So, but then probably couldn't afford very much. But the guy said no. And then he called Dad back on one famous occasion and said, oh, I couldn't sleep last night. You know, I was up all night. You've got me. And all right, it's yours. And Dad just saw this as like a major victory. Like Dad had, you know, brokered a great deal and got it for this price. So
he'd out negotiated Richard Branson sort of thing.
That's exactly right. Precisely, yes. So that story came out again and again, which just added, you know, another coat of sheen and glory to the crown because of how you got it was a great. People go, "Oh, you got a crown." He'd be like, "Yep, let me tell you how I got it too." You know, so there was extra glory in it because of the way in which he got it. So you know, it's not just that he had this car that he felt was quite a prestigious. You know, it was beyond what he thought he would ever have, even though it was, you know, quite humble. But then it was like, well, let me tell you how I got it too. The other great thing, of course, is that Dad still loved it years and years later. So when I got my L's, like my learner permit and then my P's to be able to drive around right at the end of our senior year.
So L's and P's is your learner's permit and your provisional permit. So you're like a new driver and you have to display the letter L or the letter P on the window of your car.
That's right, for the first year of driving and stuff, which most people in Australia you get around the end of your senior year or year 12 at school. And so if your birthday's at the right time. And so you get it just in time to have the prom, right, at the end of the year. I still remember sitting with Dad at dinner and him saying, so how are you getting to this thing? And I said, I don't know, we'll drive probably. And he pauses and he looks sideways and he says, you want to borrow the crown, don't you? Like, and it was a big moment.
It was like, you could take the. I was going to bring up this year 12 prom myself because I have a question just to help because you've got a better memory than me. Because I remember the night of the prom, like this formal dinner where you dress up in a tux and the girls wear these nice gowns. And I remember I went and picked up my date in my mum's car, which Mum lent me, which was quite a cool car. It was this Toyota Celica, and it kind of looked cool. It looked kind of sporty. I thought it was a pretty cool looking car.
In an 80s kind of way, yeah.
Yeah. And I went and picked up my date and drove her to your house where you had picked up your date, and there we consolidated and we all got into the Toyota Crown. So is the reason we didn't take the Celica because there wasn't much room in the back of the Celica? Or because it had very small back seats, didn't it? So there probably wasn't room
think so.
in the back seat.
The Celica didn't have back doors, did it? It was
No, you had to put the seats down, yeah.
Which was a cool thing.
That must have been the reason.
It was part of its coolness in that sort of.
It was probably that,
way.
or maybe you were a more confident driver driving into the city centre. I don't know, but anyway, the main thing I remember is we took the Toyota Crown with our dates, which is a pretty embarrassing taking this old to this old person's car. But the thing I remember best then is it was at the Hilton Hotel, but the only place you could park for the Hilton Hotel was this car park under the Adelaide Central Market where all the vegetable and fruit stands were, this crazy market. And we parked the car and we didn't know how to get from the car park to the Hilton. So we took this elevator and we came out in the middle of the fruit market. And we had to walk with our two dates in their ball gowns, all done up, looking all beautiful, and us in our tuxes. We were walking through the central market, where people are yelling at us to try and sell oranges, and there's all this madness. It was it must have been the worst night ever for those girls. First they get taken in a Toyota Crown that smells of glazed fruit and old people, and then we take them to the central market. Where they have to get hounded and wolf whistled as they walk through this. What a nightmare.
Which has to go to the Hilton Hotel, which itself has parking
Does it? I don't know. What were we doing? I don't even know what we were doing.
I don't know.
There must have been another way to get from that car park to the.
There must be.
Or maybe it saved us $5 on car parking or something. I don't know, but.
I don't know. I remember accidentally driving out the first time though. Do you remember that? Driving around looking for a park and then suddenly we're at the exit. Oh, hang on a sec. What are we doing? And the guy going, oh, that's $5. And we go, no, I've just come in. We haven't even parked yet. So we had to go out and go around the block and come back in again. Yeah.
Yeah.
I go to those markets. That's the Adelaide Central Markets. They're lovely.
Oh, yeah. They're great. They're great. But you don't go there in a ball gown and a black tie outfit.
No. And I have thought about that as I've parked there to go to the markets. Yeah.
What ended up happening to the Toyota Crown?
Well, after I'd moved away to Melbourne, Dad traded it in on a very safe Toyota Corolla.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Wow, that must have been hard letting go of that.
Yeah, passed away. A bit like the Renault. Eventually, I think someone just took it away.
Took it away quietly.
Yeah. Went to live on the farm.
Put one of those things around it like you do with a horse when it falls over at the races.
Like a shield so no one can see. You mean?
Yeah, see what they're going to do to it.
The cameras, helicopters flying over. Oh, give us a minute, will you? Give us some privacy.
Let it die with dignity.
So the front of New Idea hit the internet, went viral. It was disgraceful. Yes. Oh dear.
The Toyota Crown. What a car that was. Did you ever crash it? Did you bang it into the wall? Was that you that banged his Crown into the brick wall? Or was that your mum? Or was it him?
No.
Did someone crash the Crown into the brick wall?
I thought it was me backing out in the Renault one day because I remember you being inside and you.
It was the Renault, right?
I was, yeah. And Mum calling out.
That's right.
Oh, Brady.
Oh, Tim, what have you done?
Tim's done.
And I look out the window and there's Tim next to a pile of bricks where your dad's wall used to be, scratching his head.
That's true. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's what it was. I had to back it out because it was parked in front of the Crown. Dad had to go somewhere and we'd been out late. Yeah. So I got up early. I was out there in my pajamas, backing the car out so Dad could get out. So you're still half asleep. And then I took out
I remember
the bricks.
Yeah. that wall was his pride and joy. Till Tim smashed it over.
What about yours, man? You got your dad's pride and joy?
I don't really associate my dad with objects that are pride and joys. He's not really like that.
He has an enormous attachment to the Vietnam War and stories associated with that, doesn't he?
His war medals he gave to me a couple of years ago, and I've had them really nicely framed, and I have them displayed in my office.
Yep.
And I think it gives him some pride to see because he's got his father's war medals in his office. So I think that gives him like some warmth to see that they've been passed down and are on display. But I wouldn't describe him. He's not really someone who takes a lot of pride in objects, as you know from the way he dresses. My dad's famous for. He used to be a film critic. And when you're the film critic at a newspaper, whenever a new film's come out, funnily enough, if it's a crappy film, they need to market it more. So they usually send out merchandise like T-shirts and stuff like that with the name of the film on it, but only the crappy films. So my dad had this amazing collection of T-shirts of crappy films that he used to wear all the time.
It's like Who Framed Roger Rabbit and all sorts of like...
Who Framed Roger Rabbit was a good one. He used to wear that Mo Money one a lot, didn't he?
Oh, yeah.
There was like
Spike Lee movie.
Film called... Yeah.
Those also ran like Reckless Kelly and... Yeah, they were all...
Yeah, so
that's cool.
He's got a lot of. If he kept them, they'd probably be worth a lot of money now. These vintage like promotional T-shirts for films of the 80s and 90s. I guess he was quite proud of a few cars he owned.
Oh yeah,
yeah. He liked his cars, but not in that kind of pride and joy type way. I'm really struggling to attach any of those. I know a lot of dads are like that. I know a friend of ours had a dad who's really into train sets. Oh. And had this incredible train set. I would love to have grown up with a dad who was really into train sets.
I think Rod Stewart's like that. Rod Stewart's got like a massive train set that he's been working on for like 20 or 30 years.
He's very into train sets.
Yeah. So if Rod Stewart had been your dad, that would have been a story.
I would have had a very different life.
That's right.
Very different life.
I think the pride and joy is attached to that stuff. He's because he's very involved now in the war memorial and in stories related to that, isn't it? So he has a strong connection with that. And has done tours over to Vietnam to show people significant sites and so forth. So, yeah.
Yes. That's a good idea, Tim. I love the idea. I love the idea of this as like a podcast idea too, because I imagine if you had guests coming on talking about their dad's pride and joy, it would also be a good time to hear people just speak of affection about their fathers. And that's always just something nice to listen to, people reminiscing about their fathers.
Oh, yeah.
So I think my dad's pride and joy is a nice, sneaky way into getting people just to reflect on their fathers. That's one of the things I like about it.
I think that's a good, that's a worthwhile thing.
Nice. All right. So I think we're just about out of time today. I was gonna do an idea from a patron, but we've actually run out of time, but we haven't run out of time for me to remind you that if you want to become a Patreon supporter, now is the time to do it. If you want to get your name read out on the Tommy Ball Tim list, patreon.com/unmadefm. And by the way, this isn't the special surprise I'm working on behind the scenes.
It's not.
Patreon supporters. No, I told you what the other thing is.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
I do like that.
Do you really remember, or are you just
No,
pretending?
I do. It's great.
Okay, right,
yeah, that's good.
Okay. All right, cool. But that's it for today.
You know what? You don't want to do a Patreon?
I'm not going to do the Patreon idea today because I have got one ready and I printed it out, but it's quite long and it needs a lot of time.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
and I know you and I have other appointments, so I am going to save the idea from Jeff for a future episode. But Jeff, or should I say Tall Jeff, as his friends call him.
Ooh.
Spoiler, we will do your idea in a future episode.
Oh, I've got anyway.
Did you forget your girl's words again?
No, I've just got I wrote down something that I wanted to tell. I'll tell a story another time. It's about a card trick I did today, and I was very proud of it.
Okay. Okay. If that is not a reason to stay subscribed to the Unmade podcast, to hear the story about a card trick that Tim did that he forgot to tell us about. He remembered to tell us about a KFC he had that he didn't like, but he forgot to tell us about the card trick.
I'm pretty sure you walked me into that.
Cool. Very good. I was gonna. Were there two mystery words from your daughters, or did you not get the mystery words today?
No
words.
If I was going to have them, we've been playing a card game called Dutch Blitz. So I thought, maybe the words Dutch and Blitz. But I actually got a bit of Dutch in earlier, but I've not said Blitz. So Blitz.